didn't understand what was going on.
Did you say hi back?
No, I was like trying to process what he just did to me, and I was like, okay, well, I mean, it is what it is. That's the second time I've happened. The first time I was in the activity center, the guy from me goes, "What's up, Julia?" And I was like, I was like, what? He turned so red. I felt so bad for him. So hungry. No, I don't care.
Yes, you look a lot.
Ryan, you look just like Joey on the show. And Ben, you look just like Sam. You know Sam.
All right. Couple things as we start today. First of all, your evolution tests are graded. Towards the end of class, I will hand them back with corrections sheets, but I want to focus on the review activity we're going to do today first. I don't want you to be distracted with corrections and evolution and stuff. So the grades are in student view for those tests, and of course I will change them once you do corrections if you choose to, and if you choose not to do test corrections, then that is your prerogative as well. Kylie and Ashley, you can take a look at your tests. I have not posted the corrections documents in homework yet. I just realized that, so I will do that right after school today, so they'll be there soon. So you can work on those test corrections when you have a chance, if you choose to do them. And if not, like always, please just let me know, type a comment in there or turn it in with a note that you're not going to do any or something like that. Okay. So we'll do that at the end of class. Those of you in class, remind me to hand that stuff out before the end of class if I lose track of time or get involved doing something else. The review activity we're going to do today is basically going to review everything we have learned that has to do with cells, which is actually a gigantic chunk of what we've learned, because cells are the basic unit of structure and function in living things. And so we have talked about a lot of processes that happen in cells. We're going to start today just spending a little bit of time kind of brainstorming and almost coming up with like a rough draft of what you're going to do together so that you have someplace to start. And then most of class today, what you are going to be trying to do is create a drawing on a piece of paper if you're at home, or on a whiteboard if you're in class, that shows as much of this in as much detail as you possibly can, all in one picture within this class period. So we're going to see how this goes. The first thing I'd like you to do is spend a couple of minutes just brainstorming what topics we have learned about, not like specific vocab words, but kind of bigger topics or processes that have to do with cells or that occur in cells. And so I put some textbooks out. If you find at the beginning of the book, there's a section called the detailed table of contents that kind of breaks down what's in each of the units. If you just take a minute and skim through that, pull out a scratch sheet of paper as well. You can make this drawing with a partner today, so you just need like one scratch sheet of paper for the two of you. If you'd rather do it on your own, that's fine. But please first take a minute and just jot down a list. What topics do you think you could add to a drawing of a cell that we have learned about? So take a minute and brainstorm, please. So let's brainstorm together a little bit. We'll get to how do I draw all of this in a little while. That'll be your challenge for most of class. But what I'm going to do up here is just kind of rough draft what we're talking about, so you have kind of a big picture of like what you think you might be able to include in this drawing. Then you're going to go and see how much of it you can actually do, okay? So if this is my cell, that's where I'm starting. What can I draw in my cell? Give me one of the topics that you talked about. Yeah.
Transcription and translation.
Okay, transcription and translation. So that's a big one. So I'm going to put a nucleus, and we're going to say transcription. And that leads me out to these little things out here, and that's translation happening out there. What else? What else happens in a cell? Okay, we're not going to worry about the details of the process right now. You can figure that out. But what are some other process? I just want like the real big picture right here. You will definitely add messenger. Like your picture of transcription and translation will include a whole lot more detail than this. I'm just going to try and get the big ideas in here so that you have something to start with. What's another one? Okay, so DNA structure. What else? Respiration. So that's another organelle over here. That probably, I heard some other people talking about ATP. That would also kind of come in here, right? The process of making ATP that happens in every single cell. What else? Some of the things that have to do with cells, that does have to do with cells. So here's the problem. I'm going to put a few topics over here on the side. Because in order to draw something like meiosis or mitosis, those do have to do with cells, you're not wrong. But you have to show the cell moving and dividing, right? Which means you can't just draw one big, huge static picture. But if you have time, this is going to be if you have time, you can draw like mini little diagrams of these things on the side because they definitely have to do with cells. It's just hard to get them in one cell that's also transcribing and translating and respirating and doing those other things. What else happens in cells? Yeah. Okay, that's this one. That's the name for transcription translation. What else?
The BTP,
Look at your list, look at your table of contents. What else did you come up with? Think about this first. If you're just drawing a cell, what else are you going to include in your drawing? All the organelles, right? So let's start basic. You can review cell structure and different parts. We've already put a couple parts of the cell in there, but you can also just include other organelles and represent their functions if you can think of a way to do that, or at least draw in their structure so you know they're there. What else? What other structural stuff can you include here? Or other processes. What other things could you include here? Look at your list, because I know I heard you say more. Yeah, so first to do that, you need to talk about the structure of the membrane, right? So you'll draw your membrane as more than just a line, because the membrane is not just a line. If you want, you can just draw like a section of the membrane in great detail and the rest as a line. I don't want you to spend the entire hour drawing a huge lipid bilayer around the outside of your cell, okay? But a part of it can be a review of the structure of the cell membrane. And then we can talk about transport across the membrane, both passive and active. So that's something else you can include in your drawing. What else? What's another important function of the cell membrane? Besides letting things in and out. I think it is the last section of the chapter about the cell membrane. Osmosis is part of the transport stuff. What's the very last section of, I think it's chapter 5 about the cell membrane.
Cell signaling.
Yes, cell signaling. And that's a really important one to review because it comes up really often. If you think about just the FRQs we've looked at, there are tons of them that have diagrams of cell signaling. So cell signaling would like start here and then carry the signal all the way in somewhere into the cell, right? So cell signaling is it could start on the membrane, it could start inside the cell, but it's gonna be kind of that cascade of events going all the way in. What else? I think you hit the big ones. Are there others that you have on your list that we haven't included in our very rough draft diagram? I'm looking to see if there are any others that I thought of. Anything else you can think of that happens in cells? I think that's probably the biggest one. You got DNA, you got protein synthesis. The only other one that I think you could put in that goes along with DNA structure is the process of DNA replication. Again, that's an if you have time maybe, but I'd say the rest of it's more important. So here is your very, very rough draft of what you are going to try and draw in a heck of a lot more detail as we go through class. This reviews 3 or 4 units that we covered this year. You can use the textbook to look up these separate processes and get ideas of kind of how to represent them and to help you review this. And we'll see how far we get during class today. We'll see how far we get. This is probably something we will just work on today. If we really want to, we can go back to it and finish up tomorrow. We'll kind of see. We're flexible during review days. But for the most part, what I want you to do is draw one picture that includes as much detail of as many of these processes as you can. You don't need to include any words on your picture. It'll get really messy, I think, if you try and label everything. Try and draw it so we can kind of tell what it is. If you want to label, like this part of my diagram is transport, this part is cell signaling, like just the topic words, you could. But even that is kind of up to you if you have space and if that helps you kind of remember what you've drawn and what you're still working on. Okay? Those of you at home are just going to draw this on a piece of paper. If you have larger paper or a poster or a whiteboard or something that you want to use, that's fine. And then there's a post under homework where you can take a picture of your drawing and turn it in. You are going to get some points for this activity today, but they're mostly just completion and participation points. But drawing things is actually a fantastic way to review them, because in order to draw a process in great detail, you really need to understand all the pieces. So that's what we're going to be working on for the rest of class today. Any questions?